la actualidad hay un creciente reconocimiento de la relación entre género y cambio climático, entre género y urbanización, e incluso entre urbanización y cambio climático. Sin embargo, las maneras en que el género, cambio climático y procesos de urbanización se relacionan transversalmente han sido poco exploradas. ¿Qué ofrece esta relación triangular a nuestro entendimiento de la urbanización, de la política del cambio climático o de la equidad de género? ¿De qué manera nos ayuda este debate a promover un tipo de activismo climático que vaya más allá de la resiliencia hacia la justicia climática? ¿Cuáles son las consecuencias de revisitar estos vínculos si pretendemos promover acciones y procesos de planificación más justos y estratégicos en el contexto de un planeta urbanizado?
Gender has been really absent from the development debates and the urban development debates specifically in the last 20 years, having been probably at the forefront of some of the critical thinking about the interface between individuals, households and the city scale in the 90s. And to some extent, the climate change literature emerged in a period when there really was very little about gender in any aspect of the urban debate. And so it's not really surprising that gender's come into the climate discussions very late, because it's come back into the urban discussions only very recently.
I think it's interesting that the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change actually was one of the only three big Sustainable Development Conventions that had no mention initially of issues to do with women or gender. And it wasn't until COP7 in Marrakesh that there was any discussion of the role of gender equality or women's activism in relation to climate change. They have sort of crept in, and we see organisations like WIDA, the Women's Environment Development Organisation, the Gender Climate Alliance, which are beginning to sort of bring this discussion to the debate, but it's still relatively absent.
UN General Assembly's agreement on the new SDGs last month, we now have another opportunity to bring together the questions of gender, urban and climate change, to bring together what are now Goal 5, Goal 11 and Goal 13. So for example, in reflecting on climate change adaptation, the gender target of elimination of all forms of violence against women in public and private space links very clearly to the urban target of providing universal access to safe, inclusive and accessible public space. Similarly, the recognition and value of care and domestic work through the provision of public services and infrastructure, the gender target, links very clearly to the provision of housing and basic services, an urban target. And when we consider both climate change adaptation and mitigation, both Target 5 and Target 11 consider participation as a central issue. Free access to move freely in public space is also a supporting target in this particular question of participation, because without the freedom to move in public space, women cannot participate fully in the decision-making and leadership around the future implementation of SDGs.
Definitivamente, con el tema de género ha ido pasando un proceso de evolución, lo mismo que ha pasado con el tema de riesgos, ¿no? El tema de riesgos ha evolucionado desde verlo vinculado a un desastre, una emergencia y la guerra, y luego a vincularse con el desarrollo. Creo que el tema de mujer ha tenido un paralelo también, o el tema de género ha tenido un paralelo, que parte de una visión de primero visibilizar a la mujer, ¿sí? Y luego visibilizarla en un campo específico, visibilizarla con el desarrollo, mujer medio ambiente, mujer cambio climático hoy, pero es una evolución teórica, una evolución conceptual, pero que en el momento que vas viéndolo en la práctica, esto no es tan plasmado.
La difficulté était de faire entendre la voix des femmes pour s'occuper des questions d'accès au logement, d'accès aux services de base, aux infrastructures, à l'énergie, aux réseaux, et peu à peu aussi à des services sociaux. Les questions environnementales sont arrivées après, quand nous nous occupions aussi des questions de développement durable, notamment des questions de gestion des déchets, des questions énergétiques, de l'accès à l'eau. Voilà, toutes ces questions-là se sont posées à partir des années 90 dans le cadre de l'accès aux services urbains. Les questions climatiques sont arrivées bien après. Et donc ce sont des mouvements qui se croisent aujourd'hui.
Pour ce qui est des pays francophones, il y a un enjeu qu'il faut mettre sur la table, c'est le fait que la question du genre en fait est vraiment un parent pauvre quand même au niveau des politiques et de la manière dont les politiques publiques abordent, y compris les questions d'urbanisation. On a évidemment en Afrique francophone particulièrement une urbanisation beaucoup plus lente, tardive, moins massive que ce qu'on peut observer en Amérique latine par exemple ou dans certains pays asiatiques. Et de fait, la question de l'urbanisation s'est traitée beaucoup plus à travers la question des infrastructures, notamment la question de l'accès à l'eau, les outils économiques, la question de l'accès des femmes au marché par exemple. Et il y a vraiment un sujet qui n'apparaît pas, et si on fait une recherche de ce qui est écrit, notamment en français sur ces questions-là, on voit bien qu'il y a une absence absolument remarquable de réflexion et de travail sur le lien entre l'urbanisation, le genre et les questions de gouvernance et de justice sociale.
Women and men experience everyday living in the urban context differently, and solutions to the challenges should also be genderized, but hasn't been the case. And furthermore, we run a patriarchal system where there's a male dominant culture, and we also have a government that is male dominant. And so the voices of the males, of the men, are heard higher, are louder than those of the women.
We were invited to different spaces, and we even created some spaces to discuss with experts, with scientists and central government representatives, and then the male predominance appeared again. So it was like the scientists, were mainly men, and then we were like put it aside again. But also the issue of the city was put aside. It ended up in the same, with inability, and the people, the women will be in the most poor and agricultural activities, indigenous activities, and the cities were lost again. And the pollution or the scarcity of the water in the cities, again, was a discussion of mega projects and dams and big things, but not how to save water into the cities, how to connect with the people and the habits of consumption of water, how to save energy into the houses, etc.
There is clearly a very problematic disenchanter in the way in which we treat the links between gender, climate change and urbanization. On the one hand, significant progress has been achieved in identifying and challenging how and why gender roles are socially constructed in cities. On the other hand, if we look at debates on climate change, we will find that an increasing acknowledgement of questions concerned with the maldistribution of burdens and benefits, but often tackled at a scale that excludes the urban dimension, at a macro scale, I would say, and with very, very little consideration of what do these links mean for women and men living in cities. We need to push this debate beyond the acknowledgement that men and women are vulnerable to climate change in different ways. And doing so means going beyond just the recognition of issues connected to the maldistribution of these burdens and benefits. We need to ask ourselves not only what is happening, what is distributed, but also why is that maldistribution happens in the first place. And this pushes us to think and to talk about issues of mal-recognition and lack of parity, of participation of women and men in shaping climate justice in cities.
Cuando vas a abordar el tema de género con reducción de riesgo, el discurso empieza con la mujer es vulnerable, la mujer forma parte de los grupos vulnerables, ¿sí? Y la mujer es la que tendría que buscar soluciones ad hoc que están muy vinculadas a su actividad construida socialmente, ¿sí? Entonces no se aborda el tema desde las brechas y diferencias, brechas oportunidades, ¿no? Brechas capacidades, brechas actividades o roles sociales, ¿no? Sino se aborda más en términos de, efectivamente, qué es lo que hace la mujer, cómo la puede empoderar, pero no abordas la problemática en su conjunto.
So some of the basics that I think that a gendered understanding of urban climate change helps you to do is exactly that question of asking about who is impacted, why are they impacted, and what can be done to ameliorate that impact if it is a highly differentiated impact. I think for me, the place where the gender and climate and urban lens comes together is in the debate about public space. When you think about public space, it's the thing where you really need to be thinking about who is able to make the changes which will maximize the benefits for everybody. And it's only when you ask the questions about the for everybody that you typically include both men and women.
With regards to climate change, in Lagos, Nigeria, the major manifestations of climate change that we have are with flooding and drainage issues, because we are in a coastal area. And then these unfortunate events usually it is the voices of the men that are heard, because they are the ones that lose their houses. They're the ones that lose their homes and their businesses, whereas the voices of the women are less heard because they have less access to power, they have less access to information, and they have less access to influence.
La vulnérabilité des femmes d'une manière générale est bien liée, d'après notre avis, à la division sexuelle du travail. Vous savez, en milieu urbain, les femmes évoluent dans les secteurs informels. Au Sénégal, presque 82% des femmes sont dans l'informel. Et ça, c'est en raison de leur faible niveau de scolarisation, de leur charge domestique et des préjugés sur le rôle féminin. Donc, le point de vue de la vulnérabilité des femmes est très pertinent dans les discussions portant sur le contexte urbain. Surtout que, bon, avec le problème des changements climatiques, disons que les femmes rurales immigrent, en général viennent dans les villes pour trouver du travail. Et bien sûr, c'est dans le secteur informel. Donc, même le problème, disons, rural, je peux dire, est transféré en milieu urbain.
Les périodes post-catastrophe peuvent aussi être des opportunités pour de nouveaux leaderships, pour peu que les programmes soient organisés de façon démocratique et en prêtant attention, en ne reproduisant pas les structures sociales anciennes, qui peuvent être très inégales et très injustes, mais en organisant, en profitant, disons, pour proposer une organisation sociale plus démocratique.
It's interesting that Naomi Klein, who's been working on climate change recently, has pointed out that one of the biggest problems for solutions to climate change is that we're living in an era of what she calls market fundamentalism. And I think what's interesting in relation to the intersection of gender, urbanisation and climate change is market fundamentalism is also a significant problem for gender justice in urbanisation processes. In terms of climate change, the point that has been made that market fundamentalism means a reluctance to have state intervention in the regulation of businesses involved in climate and constant suggestions of sort of market solutions to climate change, which haven't been notably successful.
This debate takes us to think not only about questions of who is affected by climate change, but also where, at what scale and why. And furthermore, it also pushes us to think about questions about planning, urban planning. What are we doing as planners? It is clear that our role as planners is not just to minimize the unwanted effects of climate change, but more precisely to look at what role planning takes in producing gender unequal relations in cities. For instance, if we look at transport planning, we find still a prevailing approach originated in the Chicago School, exported from Western planners, that still persists on the idea of nowadays seeing and treating cities as closed loops, as fossil fuel hungry structures. And what is usually overlooked is the type of gender biases and gender divisions and differences that are reinforced actually through the strategies adopted. If we do not ask these questions, we very much follow the risk of reinforcing gender inequality in cities in the name of planning and in the name of climate change.
Donc je pense que la question de changement climatique, c'est une thématique qu'on ne peut pas aborder sans aborder de front la question de la justice sociale et la question de la participation en politique. Si les femmes ne sont pas dans cet espace public, qu'elles subissent dans les villes, eh bien elles ne peuvent pas apporter ni leurs préoccupations ni leurs solutions, parce que nous savons bien qu'elles sont aussi porteuses de nombreuses solutions. Mais on ne peut pas faire appel à elles uniquement pour des solutions micro, uniquement pour mettre du pansement sur les plaies. À un moment donné, il va vraiment falloir se poser la question de la participation des femmes à un niveau de politique beaucoup plus important, et surtout se poser la question de comment genre, climat et urbanisation se travaillent à un niveau macro, parce que vraiment pour le moment on est encore au balbutiement de reconnaître l'impact de ces trois dimensions à un niveau micro. Ça n'a pas encore percuté au niveau méso et c'est encore très loin de percuter au niveau macro.
The debates around climate change focus very much on what are seen as technical issues related to changes in the economic base of production and technological solutions to emissions and climate change. And I think the issue there is if you look at the sort of technical areas of knowledge production around economics and around science, those are the areas of knowledge production which are notable for their gender blindness and also for the absence of women as a significant proportion of sort of professionals in those areas.
While some of the global issues can be gender neutral, in finding solutions in the local context, the impact on women and men must be documented and it must be investigated and solutions must derive therefrom. And it is also important that we take into consideration the cultural dynamics of the areas that we're looking at. Like I said earlier, in Lagos, the strength for the women is in the non-monetary networks, the cooperatives, the rotating credit schemes, the religious organizations, the community women. They come together and they have been able to come up with certain solutions that protect them and their children.
Là, nous pensons que la femme, les connaissances locales peuvent-elles apporter une nouvelle vision. Bon, il faut dire que la femme porte en elle un capital social qui doit être valorisé. Et à ce titre, il faut un fort plaidoyer pour porter de nouvelles visions genrées. Il faut en parler et revendiquer la place de la femme dans la lutte contre ces impacts de changement climatique.
¿De qué desarrollo estamos hablando? ¿Sí? O sea, ¿de desarrollo para quién? Y cuando lo hablábamos con las mujeres, ellas tenían mucho más agudeza para hacer este análisis porque ellas veían, bueno, sí, efectivamente a mí me está favoreciendo en lo actual, pero no favorece a mis hijos, no va a favorecer a mis hijos. El hombre era más pragmático, no, sí, ahora me basta, ¿no? Y para mí el desarrollo es tener condiciones mejores o una mejor condición de vida, la condición y no la calidad. Para la mujer estaba más en función de la calidad. Si hubiera un encuentro de ello, ¿sí? De estas dos percepciones, yo creo que se podría generar una visión más compartida, ¿sí? El diálogo se hace más difícil cuando ya es un nivel político, ¿sí? Que esto no se percibe.
It seems to me that one of the things we have to be able to do is we have to ensure that what we don't have is a scientific community that does climate change or large-scale, big public urban management, which is largely male, largely scientific on the one hand, and on the other hand, we have a set of social development people who are largely female, who focus on informal kinds of networks, who are interested in micro questions, not city connections, not city scale questions. They're not interested in things like tariffs, they're not interested in things like design. You have to be able to both learn from practice, but you have to be able to scale that up. And that means dealing with some hard questions. So, questions of finances, questions of technical design, as well as questions of use, of ownership, of identity. And those things have to come together. And so that means that we need lots and lots of female scientists, and we need some men who actually are able to engage with community practice. So beginning to kind of move beyond the gender stereotypes. And in cities of the global south, that's a real challenge.
If you look at climate change, the main solutions actually seem to be to do with politics and to do with social change. So I think if we rely solely on expertise to do with these technical issues, we're going to be in trouble.
I think the invisibility of gender in discussions around climate change and urbanization is not just an intellectual oversight. It reflects generally our difficulties to integrate issues of the cross-cutting issues of gender and climate change in discussions about urban development planning and urban development policy. And that has real repercussions, because if we continue to render gender invisible when we discuss climate-compatible urban development, then we run a very real risk of perpetuating or promoting unjust forms of urbanization, unjust forms of resilience. And we see that actually already happening in many of the mitigation and adaptation strategies that are being promoted. So, for instance, the technological approach to service provision, like for instance the digital grids to service provision, that managed service provision that you see in eco-cities or smart cities. What these solutions don't do, by and large, is that they don't integrate the notion of gender or of difference. And what that means is that they seem to imply that the power relations that structure access to information, to resources, or to decision-making around services is just not present, or is not really worth mentioning. And I think if we're going to be serious about thinking about and trying to act towards more sustainable urbanizations and more just transition, then we really need to make this question of gender, this question of difference much, much more central to our analysis and our ways of thinking and acting.
Dimensions to the adaptations, but the money to the mitigation. So again, it's more or less like mitigation technology to the corporation, to the central government, to the scientists, and adaptation to the communities, but not the money. But the tax are there, and the dimensions are there at least. So I hope next year in Paris, or this year in Paris, will be better.
Thank you.